Our laboratory examines mechanisms and causes of obesity, liver disease. For example, we look at molecules, cellular pathways that contribute to fatty liver disease, liver injury, and then also ones that contribute to obesity, changes in fat physiology, and kind of just overall as well how environment and environmental exposure may impact those processes. We culture stem cells in the laboratory. We treat them with either known PFASs or emerging ones that our team is detecting, and ask whether or not they have the potential to take stem cells and turn them into fat cells. Second study that we have is that we are treating human hepatocytes. So human hepatocytes are human-derived liver cells, and these are, again, cultured in dishes, and we treat those cells either with known PFASs, ones that we know about, like PFOA or PFAS, and then PFASs that we know less about, ones that our team is currently detecting with their passive samplers, or in birds, or in well water from our Cape Cod community, and then going back and saying, how do those new PFASs behave in human liver cells compared to the PFASs that we currently know about and that have some health advisory? Do they behave similarly, differently? Are they less potent? Are they more potent? So we kind of have an idea, a point of reference between the older chemicals and then the new ones that the team is detecting. The other aspect of this has to do with the fact that some of the studies, some of those published by group in our group, our STEEP group, as well as others, interestingly show an association between the PFAS level and response to vaccine. We work off the hypothesis that our vaccines are effective and they're working, and this is kind of just a very foundational part of human health. So if now we have an exposure that's interfering potentially with antibody production with vaccine, that is a human health issue that could be problematic. As a mother myself, it's important that parents want the baby's health to be really dictated by parental choices. What you don't want is some outside force kind of negating or counteracting the good practices of nutrition you have. So the concern is just that this exposure can kind of, in some ways, maybe negate some of the good practices that mom has, essentially reduce the fetal birth weight. Major concern for this class of chemicals has to do with half-life and how long they reside in the body, and then also the parts of the body that they distribute to and kind of where they end up. So let me talk about the first for a minute. So they have a very long half-life. It's reported, depending if it's PFOA or PFAS or PFHXS, which is a replacement that's not currently regulated, they can have half-lives anywhere from 3 to 8 years, depending upon the particular study that cites the half-life. To have a chemical in you that has a half-life of 5 to 8 years or 3 to 8 years, depending on which one it is a substantial amount of time for exposure, especially in those who have been highly exposed. The reality is that there's typically more than one PFAS in a product or in whatever that path of exposure is, whether it's water, food, household exposure. It's usually just not a single PFAS. So we've just begun to start testing mixtures as well, and trying to understand the mixtures that we're testing is pretty important. Out of the 4,700 chemicals that are suspected to be out there, we're just testing, relatively speaking, a handful, about 20. So in our family, we do not use non-stick cookware. Our rugs are what came in the house, and they probably had some form of PFAS on them. We do try to use vacuum cleaners that have filters. I don't know how much the filters are capturing, but we do try to make sure that we vacuum and that we're using some way to capture everything pretty well with good HEPA filters. I think one other aspect is that I don't really kind of throw away things. I try to really use them to their lifespan as long as possible. So for example, if you're using any sort of equipment that's been, whether it's coats, tents, things like that, that have been coated with something that provides water resistance, that we just tend to hang on to them for longer, and we don't really just buy those types of products to replace them because of style. I tend to replace them because maybe they're ripped and they're not functional. Day to day, it's very challenging. I think water filtration is very important. So the other thing that we do in our home is we filter our water, and it's very clean water. We go through charcoal filtration. In our case, a couple others for radon, but we do what we can to make sure the water is very, very clean and pure and without chemical contamination. The reality is the most noticeable change in blood levels of PFAS was with the voluntary withdrawal of PFAS in products by 3M. We see serum levels decline, and that's how. So this is such a bigger issue. In my mind, it's really just the beginning.